Welcome to PayPod, the show that features thought-provoking interviews with leaders and entrepreneurs in the payments and financial technology industries. From credit card processing to Bitcoin, we cover it all. So if you want to know what's happening right now in the payments industry, stay tuned. Now, here's your host, Scott Hawksworth.
Hey, PayPod listeners, Scott here, and welcome to yet another episode. On this show, we're going to be talking about AR management, which is something that many businesses can face struggles with. Joining me to help explore this is Nicole Dwyer, who is the Chief Product Officer at YayPay. And YayPay is a company offering AR management solutions for businesses. So needless to say, Nicole is an excellent guest to have for discussing such a topic. Nicole, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Scott. Happy to be here.
How's your summer been going so far? Pretty good?
Couldn't be better.
Excellent. Well, to start us off, Nicole, can you give us just a brief overview of YayPay? At a high level, what does your company do?
Definitely. So our biggest value prop is that we're able to automate the collections process and provide predictability into how companies can get paid faster, process those payments easier, and have highly predictable insight into when their payments are coming in.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah.
So bottom line, you're helping companies get their money faster and more efficiently, and that's just a great thing, right?
Hey, wouldn't we all love that?
Right. Well, before going further, can you tell us just a little bit about your career and how you ended up at YayPay?
Sure. So I've been in commercial payments my entire career. I started out more on the institutional side, so working at places like Fidelity Investments and, some banks, State Street Bank, both in compliance and technology. And then moved to Bottom Line Technologies, where I managed their global banking product portfolio. So pretty much at that point, all on the commercial payment side. Fell in love with payments and then started my journey into AR and thought I loved payments, and then quickly saw all of the problems with AR and payments associated to kind of the acceptance of those payments within AR. And just got even more excited. So I love solving problems and creating new solutions that help to really change the way and revolutionize the way businesses are operating.
Love it. Love it. And, today we want to talk about AR management. Why is AR management so important? And what can happen to businesses that don't stay proactive in their approach to it? You have to stay proactive. So why is it so important?
It's really important to understand the visibility and have transparency into where your open accounts receivable sits today. And not just on a monthly basis or, an individualized perspective, right? Your entire portfolio is extremely important to you. And typically AR has been more lagging, right? A customer doesn't pay. We need to follow up with them and have a very difficult conversation, right? And I think that more companies that are starting to embrace the transparency, embrace the visibility, and kind of the follow up on a more regular basis, especially what we're trying to do at YayPay, is provide more of a customer relationship aspect to the back office where, you're having easier conversations and more relationship conversations with your customer.
I've found before that with a few businesses that I've personally run, that I have had to chase people down for payment. And it is a nightmare, especially when you're trying to run a business and you're like, hey, I've got bills that we need to pay ourselves. We need our money, especially in a small business. How does YayPay help with this? You're
right. It is an absolute nightmare. And that kind of leads directly into that lagging indicator, right? And it's difficult. It doesn't help your business or your customer's business, right? Where YayPay helps, like I said, is really with that transparency. We help to provide automation on the follow-up and communication. So post-invoice distribution, your invoices are sitting out there, your receivables are aging. As that occurs, customers can set up various workflows and communication mechanisms for each of their customers in different ways they need to communicate with them. And that's a set it and forget it, right? So as those communications are going out on the timelines that you would like to happen, 5 days before an invoice is due,
Sure, yeah.
Send a reminder, right? It's really helping the AR team to focus on what they really need to focus on. Not only from a communication perspective, where is a communication bounced or where is there an error because we don't have the correct email? Also on things like, is this customer really going to pay you, right? With our payment predictability, we're able to, with 94% accuracy, help the back office understand whether there's a customer that has a high probability of not paying you at all. So it's really helping the teams focus on those customers that aren't going to pay them and ultimately set up automated communications on the customers that will.
Wow, and I can see how that's so powerful. I wish I had that tool, years ago when I'm
Sure.
busy there sending emails into the wind and just praying.
Right.
Does YayPay help businesses manage it when customers use different types of payments? You may have some who use credit cards, some PayPal, some cash, etc.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think what a lot of back offices understand and empathize with one another on is that the supplier doesn't really have a lot of power in how their buyers are paying them, right? How they're receiving these payment types in. They have to figure out ways to accept them. So with YayPay, a supplier can accept many different payment types, whether it's card or ACH. And we're helping to provide a little bit more control back into that process in allowing one of our customers, so a supplier, to say, you know what, I'm only going to accept, or I'm only going to allow certain customers to pay by credit card in these instances, right?
Mm-hmm.
Essentially, we'll let you pay by a credit card if it's, if you pay me early, right? After that, you're going to have to pay it with an ACH. Now, the supplier can certainly accept those payments themselves, but it's helping to control a little bit of that process from the buyer's perspective, again, so that the supplier can accept more payment types under the terms in which they're comfortable accepting them.
Sure. And connected to that, and I think you were kind of discussing this a bit, what's YayPay's customers' experience with offering, alternative payment methods and how that can resolve AR problems? Do you guys recommend always offering alternative but often more expensive payment methods, like allowing customers to pay with credit cards from the get-go? Or do you only say, for problem customers?
Yeah, I mean, we really help leave it up to the supplier themselves, right? And we provide them the flexibility to do that on a customer by customer basis. Obviously, the supplier is going to want to accept payment in any way they can, and we do allow for that, right? So if there's somebody that's severely past due, they can't pay via credit card, via the portal, they can certainly call up. They can have that relationship with their supplier to say, listen, I need to make a payment via credit card, and the supplier can certainly do that. Ultimately, in the end, it depends. It varies on every business, right? Based on their margins, based on the terms with each customer, and based on when they need to get that money in. Now, we do say that by accepting, there's a lot of suppliers out there today that won't accept credit card at all based on margins or based on not having those restrictions to say, we'll accept it, but it has to be paid early, right? We help to provide insight into the fact that, that invoice and that payment is actually worth more to you if you accept that payment early via a credit card than it would be that person paying 30 days late. So we do help out from that perspective.
So do you guys have like a philosophy for maybe how far companies should go down the path of offering alternative payment methods to accommodate their customers and resolve AR issues? Is it like whatever you're comfortable with, you should consider pursuing? Or
So I think it is based on the comfort of the supplier themselves. But what we're trying to do with the data is help them understand the value, right? So we're working on some functionality right now that will actually help them understand the value of that invoice based on the various payment methods it comes in, right? And the timeline, right? So if this invoice gets paid, we're predicting this invoice is going to be paid late. If you offer a early payment discount, you can get that invoice paid now. And this is what that payment's actually worth to you based on the cost of a day of DSO. So we're trying to provide them as much data to drive those decisions based on the data in particular, or that's appropriate for their business, opposed to more generic. I think on the generic side, we're allowing the flexibility to accept those payments in any way that they need to or want to, but then helping drive data decisions based on the particulars we see in the interaction of their customers with them as a supplier and how they pay.
See, I love that. So you basically can make the case. You can say, look, you're having an issue with this customer, but look, if you offer this option, look what the benefit could be for you guys, rather than just not getting paid or getting paid way, way late and things like that and having all these other problems, right?
Exactly.
So in your experience, what types of businesses tend to struggle with AR management? And do you have an idea of why that might be?
Yeah. So the industries that I've typically seen in my history with the market has been manufacturing, distribution, wholesale.
Mm-hmm.
Any businesses that, especially distribution, where the distributor is waiting to get paid,
right?
Somebody who has their product and goods who's also waiting to get paid, right? We see that in kind of ad tech publishing media as well, where you're working through an ad agency that might be working with some major brands. So the ad tech provides a service to an agency who's then waiting to get paid from one of those brands. Well, the agency can't pay until obviously the brand pays the agency. So in those instances, that's where transparency and follow-up is key. In other areas like manufacturing or wholesale, retail, oil and gas sometimes, where margins may not be where they need to be on certain accounts, it's on making sure that, again, the communication and the transparency is very fluid so that they're, again, able to see who is going to pay them and where are my trouble accounts going to be and how do I act upon those trouble accounts and have that visibility into what I need to do and how I can communicate and how I can escalate internally. So it's both from a margin perspective where typically margins might be low. They need really good transparency into where their open receivables are so that they're having the appropriate follow-up. And then the other is where there's very complex invoicing. And that comes from disputes and deductions. So you look at consumer packaged goods and retail, where there's typically hundreds of thousands of line items in some cases, or invoices that are an inch thick getting sent out to these buyers. And there's a lot of work involved in trying to figure out, okay, they made me $1 million payment. How do I apply that payment? What does it go to? There's a short pay. How do I make this work so that I can release the next order? So, I mean, typically that's where we'll see it and where we see the most benefit of what we offer.
For sure. Now, is there a point when a business just needs to accept that their invoice isn't going to get paid and it's time to escalate it possibly to a legal matter or even just, ending the professional relationship? Or is it in general, is it a good thing to just keep trying until every single avenue is explored and you're like, you can pay me this way, whatever, just give us something?
There as well, we've found that every single industry is a little different. I talked about ad tech media. Across the board in ad tech media, you'll see invoices that are 400 days old.
Wow.
And some of that might just be based on, like I said, the relationship that they have. They know that they're going to get paid, but there's issues potentially with the actual service that was provided. And they're okay with that. And they very rarely send things to collection, at least from, the use case in the portion of the market that I've been looking at. Things like manufacturing, distribution, it's going to be different across the board. And every industry, and I think companies within the various sizes of the market are going to have different rules for write-off and how they deal with that as well. But we try to, again, make that as transparent and as easy to filter within our system as you possibly can. I think the other thing that really differentiates us on this aspect of collecting is there's a lot of folks out there that the only option they have is to send an invoice to collections. Mm-hmm. Another agency takes that on, and that can tarnish your relationship with your customer if you want to kind of keep that relationship. Some of the features that we offer as well in our solution is things like payment plans or payment plans on particular invoices, right? You have a buyer that may have fallen on bad times. They say, listen, I really want to do business with you. I'm ready to pay. I just can't pay everything all at once. And, we provide the flexibility for a supplier to say, okay, we're going to put those invoices on a payment plan and the rest of your bills are going to be auto paid. And it still allows them to maintain that relationship, to retain sending things off to a collection agency, and to really kind of mature the partnership they have with their customer.
Sure. So I guess the idea is if people really want to keep that relationship going, but at the same time, they're like, well, we need our money. Mm-hmm. You guys facilitate options for them to explore with that buyer.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
You've talked about this earlier, but some folks get in the habit of paying late. And this is something that YayPay can help track. And we're talking about your predictive technology and to help people identify this. How does this work? Do you have any advice for businesses to stay on top of this and be aware of these potential, quote unquote, problem customers?
Yeah, I mean, you hit the nail on the head. Really, our predictability and providing insight into whether or not a customer is going to pay, that's really the first leading indicator. And you might want to put that customer maybe on a different workflow. Maybe you want to get sales involved directly from the beginning, right? So I think in the communication side, leading up to the actual non-payment, it's having the right parties involved. It's making sure that you have the transparency, following up on it, and just being aware, right? Aware in general. It's a different way that you might report on that data or report on that cash coming in. And we allow for, like I said, the inclusion of a sales manager. So right off the bat, there's a high probability that this customer isn't going to pay. There could be an issue with your commission. We have some customers that actually will revoke commissions if a sale does result in a non-payment. So all of that can be automated through our system. But then the next step is, the second they do go past due, it's continuing to follow up that conversation with the customer and saying, okay, I see that you've fallen past due, not waiting 30 days till past due, not waiting on the customer to reach back out to you, but reaching out and saying, when are you expecting to pay me? What is a good expected payment date that I could rely on? So I think it's early follow-up, it's early detection. and then just continuing to foster and have the visibility into it.
It's interesting you were talking about early, because that makes total sense to me that there can be kind of a negative snowball effect if you have someone late with payment and then you don't reach out till 30 days later. And it's like, hey, this is 30 days past due or even longer. And then they're like, well, I got 30 days, that's fine. And it just, there's almost a less urgency, right?
Right.
Okay. Can you peer into the crystal ball? Where do you see YayPay in, say, 5 to 10 years? Are there any long-term projects you guys are working on or overall goals that you can share, things that are coming down the pipeline that you think your customers might really benefit from?
Sure. Today, YayPay we kind of take over post that invoice distribution and follow through to that payment coming in. We're looking to fill out the entire equation from credit to cash, essentially. I think that there's a lot of information that we have in our data that can help to better advise various decisions that are happening throughout the AR process. So straight from establishing that new customer and helping them with credit decisions all the way through to how we apply cash and make those decisions on, an invoice by invoice, line item by line item basis. So, you look 5-10 years down the line, I see YayPay as owning the market in that space, right? Owning the market in credit to cash, providing a consolidated, integrated solution to the back office and making it a truly leading indicator operation within the business, opposed to, like I said, something that's lagging and more of a must wait to communicate type of role.
Right. Okay. So my last group of questions here is we have a segment that we like to end with, and we call it Fast 5 Questions, Rapid Fire. Nicole, are you ready?
I'm ready.
Okay. Make a prediction about the future of payments or financial technology that you expect will happen in the next 1 to 3 years.
Someone will nail this network effect of buyers and suppliers and how they pay. And it's my prediction that YayPay will be a big part of that. So
good prediction. I like it. What's one cool piece of payment or AR related technology that you've come across recently that's unrelated to YayPay that impressed you?
That's an interesting one. I really think the consumerization of payments and some of the consumer ease of payment, such as Apple Pay on your watch or pay direct from your phone via an app or a site or text to pay. I think the consumerization and the way in which payments are handled in our daily lives will start to infect, I use the word infect, business, because it's going to be a necessary evil.
Absolutely. Okay, in the next 5 years, most Americans will make a purchase with either Bitcoin, Apple Pay, Google Pay, or some other thing. Which one?
I think a lot of people underestimate it, but I think Amazon Pay. It wasn't one of your items, but I don't underestimate Amazon at this point.
You really shouldn't. None of us should, because they're everywhere, man, and they're growing. So yeah. I can see that. What's one piece of advice you have for someone who's considering the payments industry as a career?
I think it's be open-minded. I think that a lot of the decisions that have been made over the last 20 years have been based on what we've been doing for the last 20 years, right? I continue to reiterate, do not underestimate the power of consumerization of payments and embrace it, because especially in the finance space and AP and AR, the tides are turning. And I think people are embracing how payments work in their personal lives. And you'll start seeing that come into how payments are working in business. And don't continue doing what we've been doing for the last 20 years, 40 years, et cetera. Embrace what's out there and think about what's new and how we can make it even easier.
For sure. Last question. What's the best business advice you've ever received, and from whom?
It was actually from a mentor that I had a couple jobs ago. He had said to me at one point, don't take a requirement at face value, right? Don't just look at what a customer is asking for and build upon it, because I can guarantee you, if you build what they're asking for, you're not going to give them what they want. I think it's really important that whenever you're asked for something, you've got to drill down to the 5 whys. You've got to drill down to, be that petulant little child that says why 500 times because they don't understand, right? Because I'll tell you, every time I've done that, I've been able to get to a true problem that's going to be solved a totally different way, or potentially solved with something that is already out there. So for me, it was the best advice, because I got that advice kind of falling on my knees and delivering something that was truly just an ask. And I delivered it and it wasn't right? It didn't solve the problem. And I was so confused and scratched my head and said, well, I did what you told me.
Right.
And so I think from a business perspective, it's important to make sure that anything you're building it based off a problem being solved. And you're building it with a partner, right? Building it knowing that someone's going to deliver it, and kind of building it like you already know the client testimonial, right? You can see the press release in your head around what it is they're asking for and why it's so important to the market. So,
absolutely. So, Nicole, before we go here, what's the best way if someone's interested in YayPay to connect with you guys and find out some more? Just going to your website, yaypay.com?
Absolutely. We've got a lot of information about the company and forms to request our outreach.
So there you have it. Nicole, I wanted to thank you so much for joining me. This was really, really informative, and you guys are doing some great things over there at YayPay.
Fantastic. Thanks, Scott. It was wonderful.
So that's it for our interview today, which means that it is time to award our Small Business Organization of the Week. Each and every episode, we want to highlight business groups and organizations doing great work advancing the interests of entrepreneurs and small businesses, helping business people connect, being positive influences in their local communities, and more. These organizations are nominated by you, our listeners. So if you ever think of one that you think deserves to be highlighted, don't hesitate to let us know. Send an email to scott@soarpay.com and we may just mention it. But for this week, we are happy to recognize the Small Business Association for International Companies, or SBAIC. SBAIC is a membership organization established to promote the meaningful utilization of U.S. small businesses at U.S. government agencies providing foreign assistance, such as the U.S. Agency for International Development, the Millennium Challenge Corporation, Overseas Private Investment Corporation, and the U.S. Departments of State, Defense, Health, and Human Services and Agriculture. SBAIC currently has over 200 small business members spread across nearly 25 U.S. states, of which more than half are small, disadvantaged businesses, such as HubZone, minority-owned, women-owned, or veteran-owned. Their members work in every development sector, including agriculture and food security, democracy, human rights and governance, economic growth and trade, education, environment and global change, gender equality and women's empowerment, global health, science, technology, and innovation, and working in crisis and conflict. With an average of 15 years of U.S. federal government experience, each of their members brings a wide range of expertise in business intelligence and analytics, capacity building, disaster response, economic development, education, gender analysis, IT, knowledge management, public financial management, tourism, and workforce development. Huge congrats to them on their selection. And if you'd like to learn more about them, you can find them online at sbaic.org. Well, that's it for our show today. Thank you so much for listening. And if you like what we do here, don't forget to rate and review us on iTunes or whatever your preferred podcast listening platform is. We'll be back with another episode very soon.
Thank you for listening to another episode of PayPod, brought to you by Soar Payments. Soar Payments is a leading merchant services provider for e-commerce, high-risk, and hard-to-place businesses. If you'd like to get the latest PayPod episodes sent to you automatically, subscribe to the show via iTunes or Stitcher, or visit soarpay.com/podcast.